Roman trade in the Indian subcontinent, see also the spice trade and incense road, and Indian trade in Europe and the Mediterranean through the overland caravan routes via Asia Minor and the Middle East, though at a relative trickle compared to later times, antedated the southern trade route via the Red Sea and monsoons which started around the beginning of the Common Era, following the reign of Augustus and his conquest of Egypt in 30 BCE. The route so helped enhance trade between the ancient Roman Empire and the Indian subcontinent, that Roman politicians and historians are on record decrying the loss of silver and gold to buy silk to pamper Roman wives, and the southern route grew to eclipse and then totally supplant the overland trade route. Roman and Greek traders frequented the ancient Tamil country, present-day southern India and Sri Lanka, securing trade with the seafaring Tamil states of the Pandyan, Chola and Chera dynasties and establishing trading settlements which secured trade with South Asia by the Greco-Roman world since the time of the Ptolemaic dynasty a few decades before the start of the Common Era and remained long after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, as recorded by Strabo. Emperor Augustus of Rome received at Antioch an ambassador from a South Indian king called Pandyan of Dramira. The country of the Pandyas, Pandi Mandala, was described as Pandyan Mediterranea in the Periplus and Modura Regia Pandyan by Ptolemy. They also outlasted Byzantium's loss of the ports of Egypt and the Red Sea, c. 639–645, under the pressure of the Muslim conquests. Sometime after the sundering of communications between the Axum and Eastern Roman Empire in the 7th century, the Christian kingdom of Axum fell into a slow decline, fading into obscurity in Western sources. It survived, despite pressure from Islamic forces, until the 11th century, when it was reconfigured in a dynastic squabble. The Seleucid dynasty controlled a developed network of trade with South Asia which had previously existed under the influence of the Achaemenid Empire. The Greek Ptolemaic dynasty, controlling the western and northern end of the trade routes to southern Arabia and South Asia, had begun to exploit trading opportunities in the region prior to the Roman involvement but, according to the historian Strabo, the volume of commerce between South Asians and the Greeks was not comparable to that of later Indo-Roman trade. The Periplus Maris Erythrae mentions a time when sea trade between Egypt and the subcontinent did not involve direct sailings. The cargo under these situations was shipped to Aden, Arabia. Eudaimon was called the Fortunate, being once a city, when, because ships neither came from India to Egypt nor did those from Egypt dare to go further but only came as far as this place, it received the cargoes from both, just as Alexandria receives goods brought from outside and from Egypt. Gary Keith Young, Rome's Eastern Trade, International Commerce and Imperial Policy. The Ptolemaic dynasty had developed trade with South Asian states using the Red Sea ports. With the establishment of Roman Egypt, the Romans took over and further developed the already existing trade using these ports. Prior to Roman expansion, the various peoples of the subcontinent had established stronger maritime trade with other countries. The dramatic increase in South Asian ports, however, did not occur until the opening of the Red Sea by the Greeks and the Romans and the attainment of geographical knowledge concerning the region's seasonal monsoons. In fact, the first 2 centuries of the Common Era indicate this increase in trade between present-day Western India and Rome. This expansion of trade was due to the comparative peace established by the Roman Empire during the time of Augustus, 23rd of September 63 BC. 19 August AD 14, which allowed for new explorations. Thus, archaeologists, with evidence from artifacts and ancient literature, suggest that a significant commercial relationship existed between the Western Indian Peninsula and the Roman Empire. The west coast of present-day India has been mentioned frequently in foreign literature, such as the Periplus Maris Erythrae. The area was noted for its severe tidal currents, turbulent waves, and rocky seabeds. Although many ships have attempted to sail outside it in order to prevent shipwrecks, many ships were still drawn inside the Gulf. As a result of the difficulties, The entrance and departure of ships were dangerous for those who possessed little sea experience. The anchors of the ship would be caught by the waves and quickly cut off, which could overturn the ship or ultimately cause a wreck. Stone anchors have been observed near Betdwarka, an island situated in the Gulf of Kakch, due to these frequent shipwrecks. More importantly, the number of discovered anchors and numerous artifacts suggest that Indo-Roman trade and commerce was significant during the early centuries of the Common Era. Onshore and offshore explorations have been carried out around Betdwarka Island since 1983. The finds discovered include lead and stone objects buried in sediment and considered to be anchors due to their axial holes. Though it is unlikely that the remains of the shipwreck's hull survived, offshore explorations in 2000 and 2001 have yielded 7 differently sized amphoras, 2 lead anchors, 42 stone anchors of different types, a supply of potsherds, and a circular lead ingot. The remains of the 7 amphoras were of a thick, coarse fabric with a rough surface, which was used for exporting wine and olive oil from the Roman Empire. Archaeologists have concluded that most of these were wine amphoras, since olive oil was in less demand in the subcontinent. A coin of Trajan, found together with coins of the Kushan ruler Kanishka, at the Ahimposh Buddhist monastery, Afghanistan. Since the discoveries at Betdwarka are significant for the maritime history of the region, archaeologists have researched the resources in India. Despite the unfavorable conditions the island is situated in, the following items have made Betdwarka as well as the rest of Western India an important place for trade. From Latin literature, Rome imported Indian tigers, rhinoceros, elephants, and serpents to use for circus shows, a method employed as entertainment to prevent riots in Rome. It has been noted in the Periplus that Roman women also wore Indian Ocean pearls and used a supply of herbs, spices, pepper, lycium, costus, sesame oil and sugar for food. Indigo was used as a color while cotton cloth was used as articles of clothing. Furthermore, the subcontinent exported ebony for fashioned furniture in Rome. The Roman Empire also imported Indian lime, beech, and various other fruits for medicine. Western India, as a result, was the recipient of large amounts of Roman gold during this time. Since one must sail against the narrow gulfs of Western India, special large boats were used and ship development was demanded. At the entrance of the Gulf, large ships called Trapaga and Kotamba helped guide foreign vessels safely to the harbor. These ships were capable of relatively long coastal cruises, and several seals have depicted this type of ship. In each seal, parallel bands were suggested to represent the beams of the ship. In the center of the vessel is a single mast with a tripod base. Apart from the recent explorations, close trade relations as well as the development of shipbuilding were supported by the discovery of several Roman coins. On these coins were depictions of 2 strongly constructed masted ships. Thus, these depictions of Indian ships, originating from both coins and literature, Pliny and Periplus, indicate South Asia and development in seafaring due to the increase in Indo-Roman commerce. In addition, the silver Roman coins discovered in Western India primarily come from the 1st, 2nd, and 5th centuries. These Roman coins also suggest that the Indian peninsula possessed a stable seaborne trade with Rome during 1st and 2nd century AD. Land routes, during the time of Augustus, were also used for Indian embassies to reach Rome. The discoveries found on Betdwarka and on other areas on the western coast of India strongly indicate that there were strong Indo-Roman trade relations during the first 2 centuries of the Common Era. The 3rd century, however, was the demise of the Indo-Roman trade. The sea route between Rome and India was shut down, and as a result, the trading reverted to the time prior to Roman expansion and exploration. Establishment. The replacement of Greece by the Roman Empire as the administrator of the Mediterranean basin led to the strengthening of direct maritime trade with the East and the elimination of the taxes extracted previously by the middlemen of various land-based trading routes. Strabo's mention of the vast increase in trade following the Roman annexation of Egypt indicates that monsoon was known and manipulated for trade in his time. The trade started by Eudoxus of Cyzicus in 130 BCE kept increasing, and according to Strabo, 25.12, at any rate, when Gallus was prefect of Egypt, I accompanied him and ascended the Nile as far as Syene and the frontiers of Kingdom of Aksum, Ethiopia, and I learned that as many as 120 vessels were sailing from Myos Hormos to the subcontinent, whereas formerly, under the Ptolemies, only a very few ventured to undertake the voyage and to carry on traffic in Indian merchandise. Strabo. By the time of Augustus up to 120 ships were setting sail every year from Myos Hormos to India. So much gold was used for this trade, and apparently recycled by the Kushan Empire, Kushans, for their own coinage, that Pliny the Elder, NHV. 101, complained about the drain of specie to India. Minimac computation millines cent and Emilius est tertium manus omnibus Indiae says et peninsula l'imperio nostro adamunt, tanti nobis delicia et femini constant. Quota in importio excellis adios, quaso, I am vel adinferos pertinet. India, China and the Arabian Peninsula take 100 million sesterces from our empire per annum at a conservative estimate. That is what our luxuries and women cost us. For what fraction of these imports is intended for sacrifices to the gods or the spirits of the dead? Pliny, Historia Nat. 12.41.84. There is evidence of animal trade between Indian Ocean harbors and the Mediterranean. This can be seen in the mosaics and frescoes of the remains of Roman villas in Italy. For example, the Villa del Casale has mosaics depicting the capture of animals in India, Indonesia and Africa. The intercontinental trade of animals was one of the sources of wealth for the owners of the villa. In the Ambulacro della Grande Caccia, the hunting and capture of animals is represented in such detail that it is possible to identify the species. There is a scene that shows a technique to distract a mother tiger with a shimmering ball of glass or mirror in order to take her cubs. Tiger hunting with red ribbons serving as a distraction is also shown. In the mosaic there are also numerous other animals such as rhinoceros, an Indian elephant, recognized from the ears, with his Indian conductor, and the Indian peafowl, and other exotic birds. There are also numerous animals from Africa. Tigers, leopards and Asian and African lions were used in the arenas and circuses. The European lion was already extinct at that time. Probably the last lived in the Balkan Peninsula and were hunted to stock arenas. The birds and monkeys entertained the guests of many villas. Also in the Villa Romana del Tellero there is a mosaic with a tiger in the jungle attacking a man with Roman clothes, probably a careless hunter. The animals were transported in cages by ship. The three main Roman ports involved with eastern trade were Arsinoe, Berenice and Myos Hormos. Arsinoe was one of the early trading centers but was soon overshadowed by the more easily accessible Myos Hormos and Berenice. The Ptolemaic dynasty exploited the strategic position of Alexandria to secure trade with the subcontinent. The course of trade with the east then seems to have been first through the harbor of Arsinoe, the present-day Suez. The goods from the East African trade were landed at one of the three main Roman ports, Arsinoe, Berenice or Myos Hormos. The Romans repaired and cleared out the silted-up canal from the Nile to harbor center of Arsinoe on the Red Sea. This was one of the many efforts the Roman administration had to undertake to divert as much of the trade to the maritime routes as possible. Arsinoe was eventually overshadowed by the rising prominence of Myos Hormos. The navigation to the northern ports, such as Arsinoe Klizma, became difficult in comparison to Myos Hormos due to the northern winds in the Gulf of Suez. Venturing to these northern ports presented additional difficulties such as shoals, reefs and treacherous currents. Myos Hormos and Berenice. Myos Hormos and Berenice appear to have been important ancient trading ports, possibly used by the pharaonic traders of ancient Egypt and the Ptolemaic dynasty before falling into Roman control. The site of Berenice, since its discovery by Belzoni, 1818, has been equated with the ruins near Asbanas in southern Egypt. However, The precise location of Myos Hormos is disputed, with the latitude and longitude given in Ptolemy's geography favoring Abu Shayar and the accounts given in classical literature and satellite images indicating a probable identification with Qasr el-Qadim at the end of a fortified road from Coptos on the Nile. The Qasr el-Qadim site has further been associated with Myos Hormos following the excavations at El Zerka, halfway along the route, which have revealed ostraca, leading to the conclusion that the port at the end of this road may have been Myos Hormos. Major regional ports. The regional ports of Barbaricum, modern Karachi, Saunagra, central Bangladesh, Barigaza, Muziris in Kerala, Korkai, Kavarapattinam and Arikamedu on the southern tip of present-day India were the main centers of this trade, along with Kodumanl, an inland city. The Periplus Maris Erythrae describes Greco-Roman merchants selling in Barbaricum thin clothing, figured linens, topaz, coral, storax, frankincense, vessels of glass, silver and gold plate, and a little wine in exchange for costus, bdellium, lycium, nard, turquoise, lapis lazuli, cerix skins, cotton cloth, silk yarn, and indigo. In Barigaza, they would buy wheat, rice, sesame oil, cotton and cloth. Barigaza. Trade with Barigaza, under the control of the Indo-Scythian western satrap Nahapana, Nambanus, was especially flourishing. There are imported into this market town, Barigaza, wine, Italian preferred, also Laodicean and Arabian, copper, tin, and lead, coral and topaz, thin clothing and inferior sorts of all kinds, bright-colored girdles a cubit wide, storax, sweet clover, flint glass, relga, antimony, gold and silver coin, on which there is a profit when exchanged for the money of the country, and ointment, but not very costly and not much. And for the king there are brought into those places very costly vessels of silver, singing boys, beautiful maidens for the harem, fine wines, thin clothing of the finest weaves, and the choicest ointments. There are exported from these places spikenard, costus, bdellium, ivory, agate and carnelian, lycium, cotton cloth of all kinds, silk cloth, mallow cloth, yarn, long pepper and such other things as are brought here from the various market towns. Those bound for this market town from Egypt make the voyage favorably about the month of July, that is Epiphi. Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. Muziris is a lost port city on the southwestern coast of India, which was a major center of trade in the ancient Tamil land between the Syria Kingdom and the Roman Empire. Its location is generally identified with modern-day Cranganore, central Kerala. Large hoards of coins and innumerable shards of amphorae found at the town of Patnam, near Cranganore, have elicited recent archaeological interest in finding a probable location of this port city. According to the Periplus, numerous Greek seamen managed an intense trade with Muziris. Then come Nora and Tindus, the first markets of Damirica, Limirag, and then Muziris and Nelsinda, which are now of leading importance. Tindus is of the kingdom of Sarobothra. It is a village in plain sight by the sea. Muziris, of the same kingdom, abounds in ships sent there with cargoes from Arabia, and by the Greeks. It is located on a river, distant from Tindus by river and sea 500 stadia, and up the river from the shore 20 stadia. The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, 53-54. Arikamedu. The Periplus Maris Erythrae mentions a marketplace named Pojuk, ch. 60. Which Gwb. Huntingford identified as possibly being Arikamedu in Tamil Nadu, a center of early cola trade, now part of Ariyankupam, about 3 kilometers, 1.9 miles, from the modern Pondicherry. Huntingford further notes that Roman pottery was found at Arikamedu in 1937. And archaeological excavations between 1944 and 1949 showed that it was a trading station to which goods of Roman manufacture were imported during the first half of the 1st century AD. The Rome subcontinental trade also saw several cultural exchanges which had lasting effect for both the civilizations and others involved in the trade. The Ethiopian kingdom of Aksum was involved in the Indian Ocean trade network and was influenced by Roman culture and South Asian architecture. Traces of Indian influences are visible in Roman works of silver and ivory, or in Egyptian cotton and silk fabrics used for sale. In Europe, the Indian presence in Alexandria may have influenced the culture, but little is known about the manner of this influence. Clement of Alexandria mentions the Buddha in his writings, and other Indian religions find mentions in other texts of the period. Even China was involved in the Roman trade with Eastern Asia. During the reign of the Roman Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century AD, traders reached Siam, now Thailand, Cambodia, Sumatra, Java, and a few seem to have penetrated northward to the coast of China. In AD 161, according to Chinese records, an embassy came from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius to the Emperor Huan-Ti, bearing goods that Huan-Ti gratefully received as tribute. Christian and Jewish settlers from Rome continued to live in India long after the decline in bilateral trade. Large hoards of Roman coins have been found throughout India, and especially in the busy maritime trading centers of the south. The Tamalakam kings reissued Roman coinage in their own name after defacing the coins in order to signify their sovereignty. Mentions of the traders are recorded in the Tamil Sangam literature of India. One such mention reads, "The beautiful warships of the Yavanas came to the prosperous and beautiful Muchiri, Musiris, breaking the white foams of Chali, the big river, and returned with curry, the black pepper, paying for it in gold." From poem number 149 of Akananaya of Sangam literature. Following the Roman-Persian Wars, the areas under the Roman Byzantine Empire were captured by Khosrow II of the Persian Sasanian dynasty, but the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius reconquered them. 628. The Arabs, led by Amr ibn al-As, crossed into Egypt in late 639 or early 640s. This advance marked the beginning of the Islamic conquest of Egypt and the fall of ports such as Alexandria, used to secure trade with the subcontinent by the Roman world since the Ptolemaic dynasty. The decline in trade saw the ancient Tamil country turn to Southeast Asia for international trade, where it influenced the native culture to a greater degree than the impressions made on Rome. However, knowledge of the Indian subcontinent and its trade was preserved in Byzantine books, and it is likely that the court of the emperor still maintained some form of diplomatic relation to the region up until at least the time of Constantine VII, seeking an ally against the rising influence of the Islamic states in the Middle East and Persia. Appearing in a work on ceremonies called De Ceremoniis. The Ottoman Turks conquered Constantinople in the 15th century, 1453, marking the beginning of Turkish control over the most direct trade routes between Europe and Asia. The Ottomans initially cut off eastern trade with Europe, leading in turn to the attempt by Europeans to find a sea route around Africa, spurring the European Age of Discovery, and the eventual rise of European mercantilism and colonialism.